Good evening and welcome to Fired Up once again. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about gun issues, political issues relating to guns and self-defense. We were preempted once again last week. That's 2 weeks in a row because of the Dodgers being in the playoffs and so on. Now they're not, so too bad for the Dodgers, better for us. If you're listening on your car radio, surprise, here we are again in your drive time going home. If you're on YouTube, you didn't notice the difference because we're on YouTube anyway. We are on KSHP 1400 Radio AM and YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. New shows come out on Thursday evening from 5 to 6. The radio is there and gone. The YouTube version stays up forever. So if you missed anything, you can tune into YouTube. Although we had a bit of a problem with sound last week too. This was a catastrophe last week. Anyway, and you can reach us if you wish at send a text or a question to bob@firedupmail.com. My guest this week is one of my big favorites, firearms trainer Lenny Davis.
Hi, Bob. Thank you, sir.
Way more than firearms trainer Lenny Davis.
I try to be more than just a pretty face.
I will definitely leave that alone.
Yes.
Would you give a little bit of your background?
Sure.
One more time, please.
Hi, folks. For you that are just tuning in for the first time, my name's Lenny Davis. I'm a retired special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. I spent the last 8 years as a contract instructor for the State Department in the Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. And now I am the current Director of Investigations and the coordinator for training facilities for Techstratics International and the office here in Las Vegas.
And there we are. We always start out each show with talking about some self-defense cases with firearms. The mainstream media carries generally only negative things about firearms use, and there are several hundred uses of firearms for self-defense every week in the United States. Depending on whose data you pick, there could be a lot more. We like to highlight people using firearms for self-defense or for good purposes, saving other people's lives, because the mainstream media doesn't. To give listeners two things: a little bit of ammunition arguing with their friends about whether people should own guns or not, and to allow some counter to the anti-gun rhetoric that is going on, especially now in the election. We are a little less than 2 weeks now ahead of the election.
12 days.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that toward the end of the show. And this will be up on the website when you have questions about what should we vote on, this, that, or the other thing. We're going to make that pretty clear on the gun issues in the end of this show. So, because the show is nationwide, a little disclaimer I've been putting in lately. Our diagnosis, my opinion of the shooting, or Lenny's opinion of the shooting, or the incident may or may not apply in the state that you're in. The laws are a lot stricter. For instance, what you could do in Nevada in a self-defense shooting, or in Texas, you couldn't do the same in New York City, probably without going to prison. So you have to bear in mind, we're talking about in general use of firearms, not about a specific state law that you would be falling over, unless you happen to be in the state where the incident took place, and then we have some pretty good opinions about that. This first incident is from the Daily Herald on the 21st. This is in Long Grove, Illinois. A detective named Christopher Lavelli, Lake County Sheriff's spokesman, said deputies were called to a home in the 3000 block of Country Lane on a report of a burglary in progress at 4 a.m. The male homeowner was sleeping on the couch in his office area in the basement when he heard someone trying to enter through a window. The 28-year-old intruder, they discovered he was 28 later on, obviously, had tried to get into a side door and apparently had burglarized already 2 vehicles in the driveway of the home. He was trying to break into the house and encountered the armed homeowner. The homeowner's wife called 911, reporting that someone was trying to break in. According to the detective, the resident interfered with the guy coming in the house. He fired at him 4 times, One of the rounds appears to have struck the intruder in the pant leg. One of the rounds hit the escape vehicle, and the other two missed. Almost sounds like the first two missed. The suspect got into his nearby vehicle, but struck a large decorative rock while trying to drive away. Probably not the best burglary ever, given the planning. Anyway, the area police departments were alerted, and a short time later, a Vernon Hills police cruiser found the suspect changing a flat tire. He was identified as their suspect in the Long Grove burglary and taken into custody. He remains in Lake County Jail on $5,000 bail, charged with attempted residential burglary and 2 counts of burglary of a motor vehicle. He apparently had burglarized the 2 cars first, and he had all the stuff was in the car stacked up next to his car when he was chased away from the house. Charges are not pending against the homeowner. The detective said ultimately that decision is up to the state's attorney to make sense of this. Defense of property, defense of life. At this point, the detective went on to say the homeowner is not being charged. Comment on this: the intruder apparently didn't actually get into the home, according to the police reports, but he was trying to. So the shooting's probably okay. We're in Illinois here, so the rural Illinois, so it's probably okay. He doesn't get any points, obviously, for his marksmanship or any awards for shooting at the fleeing vehicle, but it did cause the guy to lose control and hit the rock. That being said, the homeowner was able to protect himself and his wife from the rather hapless burglar and would-be home invader, I guess. Hopefully the resident will not be charged with anything. Probably this guy wouldn't be hurt in hiring a lawyer before he makes any further statements to the police.
Absolutely. I looked at this, and when you sent me this over, and I wondered about, folks, anytime that you fire around in self-defense, anytime you fire around, you're responsible for where it goes. This guy did defend his home, but it appears at some point he either went out of the house, or he went from the house and fired at this vehicle.
Yeah.
One, you never fire at vehicles. They're not like the movies where you hit somebody. And let's say you do hit this guy. This is where the bad parts of this could come. You hit this guy, he accelerates, because now he's shot, he's vehicle out of control. It careens across the street and into your neighbor's house and into the kid's bedroom. You're in a world of trouble. So that, yes, he did defend himself. I'm not sure, again, I not being there, I don't know the specifics of the shooting, but neither one of us are going to say it's a really good thing to shoot.
We have nothing in the reports that say the guy actually got into the house, and we do have clearly him firing at the vehicle, driving away. There's no mention also of the burglar being armed. So the threat to life issue may be a little tough. If you do this kind of thing in the panic of not thinking it through, which is fine, all you got to do is give your defense team a chance, because you may need to defend yourself against a lawsuit.
Yep.
Hopefully the guy won't. That this county sheriff and the county prosecutor will look at this and go, you know what? Nobody was really hurt. Even the bad guy wasn't really hurt. So we'll just chalk it up to experience, and hey, please don't do that again. Hopefully that'll be the result, because I understand the homeowner, what he did and why, and it's very understandable in the panic of this whole thing taking only a minute or so to take place. I mean, we can stretch it out and make times to make decisions in between. There really weren't in this case. Yeah. It's all happening at once in real life. News 3 TV NBC Newport News, Virginia on the 21st. This just before 2:30 in the morning. A 54-year resident woke up to the sound of someone inside his home on Moyer Road. Police say the homeowner went to investigate the noise and was confronted by what he believed was the single intruder. However, the homeowner was then confronted by a second intruder, and a struggle ensued. The homeowner and the suspect fired shots at each other. Now we know they're both armed. Before the suspects fled the scene, the Homeowner was hit in the left leg. He was transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, fortunately. A neighbor on Moyer Road said the area is surrounded by many families, some with young children. It's kind of scary. I have an 11-year-old here, so it's just one of those things where that worries when you hear stuff like that, of course. Other neighbors said they have lived in the area for decades and never seen a crime like this so close to home. It's getting scary because I get out and walk, and I'm wondering now at nighttime what protection we need to have in our homes to make sure it doesn't happen to everybody else. Well, I have an idea what that protection should be. That was quoting a female neighbor who'd lived there for 40 years. Couple points here. First rule, always assume there's more bad guys than you can see. I've seen many people get in trouble, getting hurt physically because they focus on the guy and don't realize that burglars usually don't work alone. They're in 2 or 3, and sometimes there's another one outside, etc. So don't jump in combat with the one guy when you haven't had a chance to evaluate what's going on. He also went through his home. If you really believe there's somebody in your house, try and call 911. Stay put. If you're in your bedroom with your family members, lock the door if you can, or barricade it, and wait for the police. They got body armor. They got free lawyers. They're way ahead of you in doing this. If it becomes absolutely necessary for some reason to search your house, remember the rule. There are more intruders than you know. Move slowly, carefully, keep your back to a wall so you don't bypass somebody who's going to clock in the back of the head.
It never works out, folks. I train a 40-hour class for law enforcement officers, not SWAT teams, law enforcement officers, to clear houses, to clear buildings. A 40-hour class. And it's a very extensive class in 40 hours. You can't clear a house or a building by yourself. It's virtual suicide to do so. Like Bob said, if you can, barricade yourself in your bedroom. If you have a family member, like a child, down the hall, go down the hall. Get them all back into your bedroom. Barricade. Call 911 and make them come through that fatal funnel. Make the bad guy, if they really and truly, make it known that you're armed. You've called the police and they're on their way. If that guy really and truly wants to come through that door, you own him at that point. Don't go going out and clearing your own home. It never works.
And a note that I made to myself when I was reading this guy's story, knowing Lenny would suggest that. I mean, we have lots of training. We have concealed weapon classes here at the store that are 8-hour classes, but and I'll mention we do those every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can sign up online, thegunstorelasvegas.com, to get those classes. But it's a very short class, has to do with gun safety and a lot of other issues. Just learning to clear a house is really complicated and almost impossible when you're alone. However, I have a cheaper alternative for you. If you live anywhere near where someone has a paintball game or a laser tag game, go over and play a few games. You will learn rapidly how to clear houses and how not to get shot, going in between doors and windows and back and forth, whether it's indoor or outdoor game. I suggest the indoor ones because they're really more akin to home defense. If it's paintball, you're going to get hurt a lot because the paintballs really hurt. Laser tag, pretty much the same, but less pain and a little neater.
Your ego gets injured in the laser tag.
But you will discover 12-year-old kids who can whoop you in a gunfight in a heartbeat. But if you do that a few times, even a few trips to the paintball or laser tag will be a lot of fun, and you will develop skills that will keep you alive if somebody's in your house. Just a suggestion. Try it. I don't own a paintball game. Did it one time. Great for training. Really recommend them. WIBC News 93.1 FM. There's a radio story. On the 22nd in Bargersville, Indiana, A Johnson County woman was attacked inside her home by a masked man early Friday morning, according to the Daily Journal. That's the local newspaper. It happened just after midnight in the Harvest Groves neighborhood near State Road 135, if you know where that is in Indiana. Police say the woman was letting her dog outside. Again, this is dark 30 in the morning. She was letting her dog outside out the front door when a man wearing a ski mask ran into her home. She opened the door to let the dog out, and the guy runs inside. Amazing. She was home by herself. She told police the man attacked her in the living room, but she was able to get away and run upstairs. Apparently, he ran in. She opened the door. She's still in the living room. He ran by her. He knocked her down, apparently. It wasn't clear whether he knocked her to the ground or he just ran into her. But he ran into her. Anyway, she was able to recover from that and ran upstairs, followed by the intruder coming up the stairs. We'll presume at this moment the dog wasn't a Rottweiler or something, or the dog would have been up there too. That's when she went to the bedroom, grabbed her husband's gun, and fired 2 rounds at the guy. The intruder then turned and fled the home. First bright thing he's done in this whole episode. The neighbors do not believe the man was hit. Our investigators, I'm sorry, don't believe the man was hit. That means there's no blood evidence, obviously. The woman went to a neighbor's house to call for help. She was not seriously hurt. She was checked out at a local hospital, and Bargerville police are continuing the investigation. This is a really lucky victim. She opens the door, and apparently the guy is hiding outside. I don't know whether he knew there was a pattern of her letting the dog out at 1 in the morning or 12:30 in the morning. But anyway, he was right around the corner from the door, apparently. So he knocked her aside and entered her home. Fortunate again, when she went upstairs, she was able to grab her husband's gun before the guy was able to jump on her. Having the firearm obviously saved her life, or at least her suffering serious injuries. Given the speed we've got here of this whole, and we're got an incident here that probably is compressed into 30 seconds.
If that, yeah.
Yeah. I give her excuse for her marksmanship. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and wham, she's running upstairs, and the guy knocked her over. And she won the fight. She got 2 rounds off, and the guy ran out. Police were not able to locate him. There's not a really good description of the guy, at least as of this report being written. Really scary. Had she not had a firearm, what happens?
Well, and one thing too, did she, she lets the dog out at 1 o'clock in the morning. Trust me, I know. I've got a dog. She once in a while has to answer the call of nature. But if I let her out and there's somebody out there, she's going to make noise. And, even if you've got a Chihuahua, which, well, that's not a Chihuahua is a Rottweiler that's just smaller. They're just got the heart of a Rottweiler. But the dogs are going to make noise. Be attuned to that. If you let your dog out and all of a sudden the dog is barking in your backyard, that's what they call a clue. Yeah. I certainly at that point would have been arming myself before I ever would have opened the door.
Well, yeah, and that's the other obvious solution. If she's going to have to let the dog out in the middle of the night, I can be absolutely sure that the next time she'll have her gun in her hand when she lets the dog out of the door. Common sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's going to be afraid to open the door for the rest of her life. So we may see a dog run coming here or something, but this is incredibly scary that you open the door for the dog and the guy just runs in your house. I mean, I have not seen this before, and I've reviewed 3,000 of these.
Yeah.
And every once in a while there's one that is so totally different. Anyway, have a gun. Like I said, her marksmanship is excused. This is really a surprise and speed, and nobody shoots well under those circumstances. I know when this appears on MLN.com or one of the other websites, because it will, I'll have people writing in saying, well, she should practice and da. I don't think any of us would have done any better, no matter how much we had practiced.
You know, unless you're there and you've got your weapon in your hand. Now, one little thing I can tell you, folks, if you do let that dog, you've got that dog that has to go in and out, and you don't have a doggy door. I don't have a doggy door because I do have a Rottweiler, and but to let her out would be big enough to drive a truck through. So again, it's a portal into my house, so I don't have a doggy door for her. One little thing you can do though is go buy a doorstop or just a wedge. You know how wide the door has to be to let your dog in. Put that wedge right there so the door won't go any farther than right there. The dog can come in. If the guy tries to do it, it's going to slow him down at least. So one little thing to think about.
There are a lot of ways to look at correct. That's why we do the stories. So you can look at what if that happened to you or your house is set up the same way. Mm-hmm. Little tricks that may alleviate this happening to you. At the gun store, we offer machine gun shooting for corporate groups, bachelor parties, group events, weddings. We have machine gun weddings. Go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, or contact Melissa at that address, thegunstorelasvegas.com. She can get it all set up for you and photographs and however complicated you want to make it. We can handle groups of 20 or better for weddings, and it's really cool. And if you ever see on the web that we're having a wedding and you're not even involved, you got to come look at it because they're really cool.
Bring your body armor.
There. WCTI, which is ABC News 12 in Wayne County, North Carolina on the 22nd. Here we go again. At approximately 4 in the morning, deputies from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to a home on Little River Drive, reference to a home invasion and a shooting. Upon their arrival, they found the suspect of the home invasion lying near the door. He'd been shot once in what could be a life-threatening wound. EMS was dispatched to the scene and transported him to Wayne Memorial Hospital. The investigation showed the homeowner and his family were asleep in bed when their alarm activated. The homeowner went to check the alarm. When he didn't see anything wrong, he went back to the bedroom and the alarm was activated again. He went back to check a second time and was surprised by the suspect, who was holding a gun pointing it at the homeowner. I wouldn't have been totally surprised, but anyway, he didn't expect who expects a home intruder. They got into a physical fight over the suspect's gun. The suspect was close enough, he was able to grab at the gun, and they're wrestling over the gun. During the struggle, the firearm went off and the suspect was hit. So far, so good. The homeowner then contacted law enforcement. The suspect did not have any identification on him, was later identified as a 32-year-old. He was airlifted to Vidant Hospital in Greenville due to the severity of his wound. He died later in the afternoon of that wound. No charges are expected to be filed against the homeowner. This is a very fortunate incident also. If you're going to a gunfight, you want to bring your own gun. You're really starting a step down when you got to take the gun away from the bad guy. And in this case, the bad guy was dumb enough to be close enough to the homeowner that the homeowner was able to deflect and grab the gun. Had that not happened, this could have been a nationwide story about a family being murdered. There were 2 children in the house. This is really scary. I expect this homeowner in the future will be armed. One would think.
Folks, if you've got an alarm system in your house, if you set your alarm when you go to bed at night and that thing goes off and you go to investigate, which again, I don't really think you should be doing. I will not, I don't preach that. I know some people say, oh yeah, you got to go check your house. But if you're going to do that and you don't have a gun, you're really behind the power curve. And this also brings back another point that I had from the earlier one. When you are clearing a house, this guy bumps into the homeowner got the gun. If you don't know how to clear a house, it could be your gun getting taken away from you. Yeah, so that's why I say, be very careful about doing that. This was this homeowner, this was a flip of the coin, and the homeowner came out on top. Luckily, goodbye to bad rubbish with the burglar. Shouldn't have brought a gun and shouldn't have been burglarizing houses, but he's gone now, and that's okay. But this could have been very, very bad.
And just because of this incident, when the guy is now looking through his house with the alarm going off, have you ever sat down with your family and discussed what would happen if there's an intruder in your house? It'd be a good idea. You sit down and you talk about if the house catches fire and we all get out of the house, where are we going to meet? You've seen the commercials on TV and they all think they're going to meet in a different place and so on. How do you escape from the house? Where are the kids? Is there a room you're all supposed to run to if there's a burglar in the house and your alarm's going off? Who calls 911? Who gets the gun if you need one? If you have teenage children, are they mature enough to be able to grab the gun if the adults are detained or asleep or disabled somehow? We've done lots of stories of fairly young teenagers being able to defend their home and their parents or themselves when they're home alone because they have learned how to use the gun and they know the rules about using it. But sit down with your family and discuss it so you at least know what you're all going to do. Who's upstairs, who downstairs, where do you go, who calls the police? Talk about it so you don't assume somebody else called the fire department or called the police or called the ambulance.
Well, and also, if you're adult or teenage children live in the house, make sure they know how to operate that weapon system that you have. Take some time, take them to the range and train them with them. If they don't know how to use it, they're not going to be able to save their life with it. So make sure that everybody's got training. But it's a good point.
Once again, concealed carry classes are free, basically here at the gun store every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can sign up online, thegunstorelasvegas.com, or call in during normal business hours, and we will get you signed up for class. 3 times a week, starts at 9 in the morning. You can get a reservation or just show up. We usually get everybody in. We're getting kind of busy now. When you see several more home invasions in the paper, that's when our classes start to fill up, particularly Saturday. So you want to do it ahead of time if possible to get your name on the list. This is the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. I'm just really curious how they got that name. But
well, first it's Lubbock.
Lubbock. Okay.
Not Lubbock.
Lubbock. Okay. Lubbock. I get nasty grams from people in Texas all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Avalanche Journal reported on the 23rd, a few days ago. Police responded to a burglary call again at 2:15 a.m. This is on a Sunday morning. Are you getting a pattern here, folks, of when the burglars show up in your house? This is a 3700 block of 28th Street. Police spokesman Tiffany Pelt said officers arrived to find a suspect lying on the floor with a single gunshot wound to his stomach. Good. The victims, a family of 6, told police they were sleeping when a man broke through the back door and entered their kitchen. One of the victims heard the man and alerted his parents there was an unknown man in their home. The father told police the father had a gun. He went down. He told the suspect he had a gun, and police were on their way, and he needed to leave. At that point, we have the guy decides to fight, or the guy decides to run, or the guy surrenders. None of above. At that point, the suspect told the family to get out of the house and started pouring lighter fluid on the kitchen floor and on the kitchen appliances, and trying to light them on fire. You never know. Anyway, the father wanted the suspect to stop or he would shoot. The suspect became more agitated and began approaching the homeowner. He backed up a little bit. When he had no room to retreat any further in the kitchen, he shot the intruder in the stomach. You never know what you're going to get. I said that on a show a couple of weeks ago, that intruders are like a box of chocolates. You never know who does that.
Well,
who do you find burglarizing your house and he starts pouring lighter fluid around?
well, the thing you got to remember, folks, if somebody's crazy enough to break into your house, especially if they think you're home or that there's a chance that you're home, they're pretty hell bent on being crazy. And now this guy's probably got front row at the mental institution once he's released from the hospital. Didn't say he died or anything, so I'm assuming he didn't succumb to his wounds. But you know, when a guy's starting to pour lighter fluid on my kitchen floor, you're gonna get asked in my house. If you break into my house, you're gonna get told to get out one time, and if you don't get out, you're probably not gonna like what's gonna happen.
I would just, you know, I read this thing like 4 times and looked up several other websites or police reports that I could find, and they generally all said the same thing. This guy is obviously a wacko, and I tell people constantly, we teach it in class, that warnings work 95% of the time. You know, there'll be high crime areas where it's at 90%, and there'll be other areas where it's 98%. But 19 out of 20 times when you have an intruder and you tell them you have a gun, 95%, 19 out of 20 run away. They don't fight with you. They simply realize they're going to die. Whatever they're planning to steal isn't worth it, and they run. And the rule is, you know, if they haven't got one of your kids under their arm, let them go, call the cops, get a description, and, you know, wait for the police. The other 5%, the 1 out of 20, either are committing, I guess we would call it suicide by civilian. Like some guys do suicide by cop. They or entice the cops into shooting them. We've had a few of those lately. Or they're just totally nuts and are living in a different reality. And this guy may think he's burning down, you know, the Martian home on Venus or something. We'll never know.
Well, and you know, this guy, God only knows what, you know, this guy was potentially on, narcotics or, you know, drugs, PCP, you know, anything like that. So, you know, this guy obviously was not thinking like a normal human being. So he got, and of course, you know, here's the other thing, folks. It's Texas. Wake up. Those people, I think in Texas, you get your birth certificate, and when you become of age, which usually in Texas is about 5, your birth certificate is turned. You can get another coupon with your birth certificate for your first gun. So most everybody in Texas has guns. So not a good place to go. And if you kill somebody there, they have an express lane to the death house at Huntsville. So yes, you really don't want to commit a murder in Texas. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Anyway, the point of this is you run into people you can't negotiate with, and the only recourse is to use legal force. This was obviously one of those cases. I would love to tell you warnings work every time, but you never know who you're dealing with. There are really, truly insane people out there that show up doing this stuff. WPTV 5, West Palm Beach, Florida. This is on the 24th in Riviera Beach, Florida, nearby. Just before 9 on Saturday evening. This is not in the middle of the night. Investigators say a 36-year-old individual approached 3 men who were barbecuing in front of their residence on East 27th Street. He pointed a firearm at the 3 guys and demanded they turn over their valuables. As they did so, one of the victims removed a shotgun from the rear bed of his pickup truck and fired a couple of shots toward the robber. 911 was called. Arriving officers found the would-be robber lying motionless in the road. Riviera Beach Fire Rescue responded along with the Palm Beach County Medical Examiner, who declared the guy dead at the scene. According to police spokesman Roseanne Brown, police found a handgun underneath the body, along with a cell phone belonging to one of the intended victims. Police also recovered a stolen vehicle in front of a nearby residence that police believe the robber was driving when he got to the incident. The investigation is continuing on this. pretty straightforward. The bad guy, first, we've got clearly a good self-defense case and lots of nice evidence. They found the guy's gun under the body. He had one of the cell phones that he'd taken from the two guys who were cooperating while the other guy tippy-toed over and got his shotgun. He has his handgun pointed at the victims. There is obviously no room in here for warnings. No one is expected to run away from a place they have every legal right to be standing. And considered tactically, this just came up. I'm looking at solutions. If the individual standing there on their own front decide they're going to run away, the guy's pointing a gun at them at the time. This is not running away from somebody who says he's going to go get his gun or whatever. If the bad guy's pointing a gun at you, tactically, running away from him is very, very likely to get you shot. He wants your cell phone, your wallet, your jewelry, whatever it was in this case. I can't imagine some fool approaching three guys standing on their barbecue, but whatever. I mean, there's no points here for smartness.
First off, he forgot the number one rule: never bring a handgun to a shotgun fight. Two, never get between a man and his barbecue.
Big point. Yes.
Big point. These guys. This was a great shooting. It was a very good shooting. Obviously, in Florida, they take their barbecuing very seriously and don't interrupt it. But Bob made a perfectly good point. This guy's got a gun pointed at you. If you run, you're probably going to get shot. He gave him this. This reminded me of that. I can't think of the show that William Shatner played. It's gone off the air, but he played a real high-priced attorney, and he was getting robbed, getting mugged in the parking lot. And he says, "I want your wallet, your watch." And he says, "Okay, here, watch, wallet, gun, knee," and he shoots this guy, and it's the same thing. This guy's got robbed, but obviously this guy never saw the shotgun in the back of the truck, so too bad for him.
Yeah, the community's a little bit safer now than it was before this incident, and what else can you say? This was not a guy who was going to add anything to the gene pool anyway. Once again, concealed carry classes here free every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Sign up at thegunstorelasvegas.com. WBRC 6 Fox News on the 24th. I'm doing this whole thing in date sequence. You notice that?
I know.
I arranged
very
them all
professional. I'm impressed.
Rearranged them by dates of happening. This
and
is all over
and they're
3 days.
Actually in the same century. So it's good.
This is in Weakley County, Tennessee. Weakley County, Tennessee. Deputy responded to a home on Hinesver Road around 10 p.m. on Sunday. They found a 45-year-old male dead in the upstairs bedroom of a house. He had been shot. According to Captain Randall McGowan, the investigation revealed that he was the husband of a woman in the home. He had been living near Rutherford, Tennessee, and apparently driven to his wife's home and parked his vehicle a half a mile away. We are in Weakley County, Tennessee. He's living in living in another town. And he drove to his wife's home, parked his vehicle a half mile away. He then broke into the home and assaulted her with a knife and fired more than one shot at her with a semi-automatic firearm, presumably a pistol, didn't say. The woman had her own firearm in the bedroom and returned fire, hitting the violent attacker. The husband had pled guilty to charges of domestic assault in September, and there was an active order of protection in place to keep him from any contact with his wife. Investigators called the deadly shooting an act clearly of self-defense. The case will be presented in January to the Weakley County Grand Jury. This is another, and we have one of these. I try to have one every week where possible that it's a clean enough case I can talk about. A restraining order made on paper is enforced with lead. Most domestic abusers have the sense just to move on with their lives and find a different woman to beat up or victimize. Some become so focused and enraged that attacks like this happen. If you are in this position and you have a domestic and you are trying to keep your ex away from you, you need to learn to protect yourself. In instances like this, calling the police and saying my ex, or my husband in this case, they're still married, is downstairs, and the police response time here in Las Vegas is around 7 minutes average. Nationally, it's longer than that in most places. There's no way the police are going to arrive in time to be of any help at all.
I've said on this program multiple times, and I will say it again. When seconds count, the police are minutes away. That's not bagging on the police. The police do their job to the best of their ability. It's just the reality. Like Bob said, that the response times, to a hot call if you're in Vegas, approximately 7 minutes, probably, possibly very much longer. That 7 minutes is a lifetime when somebody's trying in your home and trying to hurt you. You've got to protect yourself.
So get a firearm, get some training, some classes. Again, like I recommended for one of the previous stories, paintball game, something to learn how to use the gun in close quarters and make it work and make it count. Again, we deal with this issue in our concealed carry classes. If you are such a nice person that you don't want to have a gun, and that happens, tasers are a good choice. They're not as effective as guns, and you have to hit them with both darts and so forth. Baseball bats work, pepper sprays work to some degree. Everything else is below a gun, but practice with something. Keep a baseball bat next to your bed. Some way to defend yourself. Got to do it.
And if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, make sure that you have the baseball bat wrapped with barbed wire at the top of it, and make sure you call it Lucille. Anyway, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
One more, then we're going to get political. KXLY News 4 in Spokane, Washington, again on the 24th, fatal shooting between a resident and a 42-year-old intruder around 8:30 p.m. in a neighborhood near Flora and Montgomery, if you know where that is. An Iraq veteran told detectives somebody knocked on his front door and he armed himself prior to answering. Good idea. If you're not expecting somebody, that's always a reasonable thing to do. Seeing no one, he went out his side door and then noticed a male subject standing in his yard. The resident told police he confronted the stranger in the darkness. He ordered the male to leave several times. Instead, the stranger suddenly charged toward him. The resident fired a single shot. The wounded man then ran back towards a trail behind the home and was hiding just off the home's back porch when responding officers found the guy. He'd been hit through his femoral artery and still hid from the police. The stranger refused medical help, even though he was bleeding to death right in front of the officers, and he actually died at the scene. The homeowner has been cooperating with detectives, has not been charged. Detectives will be investigating the intruder's history and the autopsy results to try to determine what was going on here and if the use of deadly force was justified. The final decision will be up to the Spokane County prosecutor, the article says, named Larry Haskell. This is possibly an unarmed trespasser with some mental issues. This is going to be a tough case. In the darkness, it's clearly reasonable for the resident to shoot in self-defense when the guy charged him. No weapons were visible does not mean he had no weapons, and the police have not released the information. The autopsy will tell him if he was on drugs or alcohol or whatever. His history will tell them if he had mental issues. Obviously, one of those things is going to be true. Nobody gets seriously shot and then hides from the police and refuses medical help unless they're a bubble off plum here. The resident is likely okay in this case, but a lot of paperwork and money spent to deflect a lawsuit is possible if it turns out that in fact the dead guy is unarmed. And the issue I have here again is going out of the house to confront the guy. Once he sees the guy in the yard, call 911 and stay put. Often juries look at who supplied the confrontation, who came to who, and hopefully this guy is okay. This is one of the types of things that you look at and you want to have an attorney present before you talk to the police. Not that you're going to lie, but you want to not say anything until you get your brain straight. You're going to be in a horrible mental state. There's a guy, he's dead, and you shot him. You know, that even if you're an Iraq veteran, that's tough to live with because this is a civilian world, totally different. So this one is a little bothersome. Hopefully, if something like this happens to you, you need to get an attorney before you start making statements to the police.
Absolutely. And the only other thing I could say on this is if you're going to use a gun to defend yourself and defend your home, it's probably going to be in a low light situation. Not everybody very few people break in the middle of the day. You've seen several.
We had one so far.
We've had one so far. All of the rest of them have happened at night. You need to either get a weapons light on whatever weapon you're going to use, whether it's a handgun, shotgun, carbine, whatever you're going to use for home defense. Make sure that you have a light on it because you have to be able to identify your target. Make sure that you identify the threat. If you don't have a pistol, one of the pistols that I use for home defense is a Smith & Wesson M&P, and it has a rail and I have a light on it. It's just like one of my tactical pistols I've carried for years. Always have a light on your gun. If you don't have the ability to put that on it, say you've got a revolver, or if you've got a pistol or a shotgun that doesn't have the ability to put a light on it, go to somebody, find a good firearms trainer that will teach you a low light technique with flashlights. Keep a flashlight with your gun at that time. But believe me, I am a huge proponent, and I have been that way for many, many years. You have a light on your weapon, and that's what saves your life.
One of the things you'll hear from a lot of firearms trainers is the light on your gun gives them something that the bad guys shoot at the light. And I have searched for cases where that happened. New York PD did a whole study on it. New York PD researches everything. And they could find 2 instances in all of the shootings they had over the 20-year period where the guy actually fired at the flashlight. They really don't. When they're caught in the light, they're blinded, they can't see, and they do lots of other things, but they rarely shoot at the flashlight.
Yeah, I think that's a leftover from the military and light discipline in a combat zone. Yeah, you don't want to turn a flashlight on in a combat zone. You're going to draw a fire. But like Bob said, I've never heard of anyone who in a gunfight or against a law enforcement officer fired at the light.
It's probably doesn't exist. So we're going to turn in our last 9 minutes here to the election. I started several times to write a list of politicians to put on the website for the Nevada election. And looking at what I get when I finish the list, you don't need the list. We are talking here about gun issues. That's the subject of this show. People that are for restricting firearms rights and people that are pro-gun politicians. This is it. If they have an R after their name, they're not anti-gun. We have some Republicans who are terrible on taxes. They are terrible on school funding. They are terrible on some eminent domain cases and a lot of other smaller issues. But if you are voting a pro-gun ballot, the R's are fine. All of them, I have a couple of friends of mine who are Republicans that I'm not proud of saying I'm a Republican to them because they're a pro-tax and other issues. But here we're talking about the very narrow issue of gun rights. Vote for the R's straight down the ballot. Next show, I'm going to talk a little bit about the judges. There'll be one more show before we do the voting for real. If there is no R on your ballot, no Republican, then vote for the Libertarian or the IAP candidate. We've got one or two races where you have no choice. There's only Democrats running against Democrats. Question 1, the gun issue on the ballot is a trap for Hillary to create her list of who owns guns. You need to vote no on 1. It is a nightmare for gun dealers. The law is very poorly worded. It tells transferors that want to transfer their gun to their friend all sorts of things to do that they can't do. Go to a dealer and the dealer will do this. There's a lot of stuff the dealer can't do because whoever wrote that piece of garbage didn't research what the federal rules are and what ATF makes us do and how the background check system works. We simply can't do it the way it's outlined in that bill. So they're not, if it passes, they're going to have to do something different. And God knows what that will be. There is no relationship between background checks and crime. That's a leap of faith that if a guy fails a background check, he's going to go, oh, the cops know about me, therefore I won't ever commit a crime or beat my wife or, that's crap. Of course they still go get a gun someplace else and commit crimes with it. They're criminals by definition. So it will have no effect on crime. And this garbage about if it saves one life, it's worth it. No.
And I want to, if I can, I'd like to speak to this because I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I spent 31 years as a law enforcement officer. I am so anti question 1 because there's a commercial going on here in Nevada that's got some guy. I've never heard of this guy, and he's a union guy for some very innocuous, as far as I can determine, law enforcement union. He says, oh, this is going to reduce law enforcement deaths by 48%. It is, as my law instructor at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center many, many years ago said, that is bovine feces. It's not going to stop a bad guy from getting a gun. A bad guy will get a gun when he burglarizes. A bad guy will get a gun through a straw purchase. None of that will be stopped by question 1. It is going to be a burden on law enforcement and a burden on us as a taxpayer, and it's going to be just an unenforceable law. And the other thing that really burns me up is this was brought up by Mr. Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, and his Everytown USA Political Action Committee. He's trying to make every place safe. Well, Mr. Bloomberg, I will tell you one thing. I will vote for question 1 the day that you take your armed guards, and I know you have an armed security team, and you tell them they no longer can carry their guns. Until then, do not tell me what and how I protect myself and my family. I will now step down from the soapbox.
Now, the presidential election. Hillary Clinton needs to be voted against. She will destroy the Second Amendment, your rights to keep and bear arms, everything she has proposed, her Australian model of confiscating firearms by buying them back. It's not confiscation if she does like the Australian government does and pays you for them at the price the government says it's worth. And they have a committee that'll be set up to determine if you object to the price you're getting. Because they give you money, you're still mandated, required, ordered to turn in your guns to the government. When Australia did that, their crime rate went through the roof. Do not believe any other crap you hear on the liberal media. Australia is going through a crime wave that is unbelievable. It is not safe to walk the streets in most towns because of street crime. London is going through the same thing when they did it. And also Hillary has bragged she intends to void the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Firearms Act. It prevents gun importers, manufacturers, distributors, or dealers from being sued for misuse of their products. The appellate court in Washington, D.C. just turned down a case where Bushmaster Remington is being sued for the Bushmaster rifle used at Sandy Hook, blaming Remington Arms because they entered that gun into commerce. The shooter was underage. He murdered his mother to get the gun, and he murdered people with the gun. He committed every criminal act you could possibly imagine, and still they're trying to blame Remington for the deaths, the tragic deaths of those children. That the left side would stoop to that level of crap is just beyond me. However, if Hillary is able to do that, to somehow by executive order void the Lawful Commerce in Firearms Act, the gun business will close the next day. There is no way any of us can transfer a firearm to anyone if we're responsible, if it's then stolen from the guy, or he gives it to somebody else who gives it to somebody else, and we're still liable because we're the ones that put it out there for the public to have. We will be, obviously can't get insurance, and the gun industry will close literally the next day.
And basically, folks, to put this in a nutshell for you, this is like saying, okay, there are people who are killed with cars. So now we're going to make Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, Nissan, everybody responsible. So if you use one of those cars and kill someone because you're a maniac, then that manufacturer, that car dealer can be sued for that. It is the same thing. So I am, and I just want you to realize the other big thing with Hillary Clinton getting in, if Hillary gets in, the Supreme Court is going to get stacked to where, again, you've seen in the last 8 years, if you can't get it through legislation, you try to legislate using the courts.
We're about a minute away.
So she's terrible. There's just a million things you could say about her. Yes, and I am a Donald Trump supporter. I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump has said and does, but he speaks his mind. He's plain spoken. I have been accused of being that. I surprisingly enough, I have character flaws too, like everybody else. And I think he's right for what this country needs right now.
So I'm asking our listeners to vote against Hillary Clinton. That means voting for Donald Trump. Again, I have some reservations about Mr. Trump, but he is way ahead of her. She's going to destroy the country. And for those of you, they say about 4 or 5% of the voters want to vote for Gary Johnson as a protest. Good libertarian guy. That takes away votes that would otherwise go to Donald Trump. With all respect for Gary Johnson, who I've met more than once, don't vote for Gary Johnson. That only takes votes away that would go to Donald Trump, and he may need everyone they can get to make America great again and to save our gun rights.
And please, here in Nevada, if I can quickly, please, when you go to vote, I just early voted this last Saturday. When the polls opened early, be very, very careful. Watch your ballot. Make sure that it is marked correctly. They do use machines here, and there has been some instances of problems. So please be careful.
We'll be back next week with my guest attorney will be Donald Green. We will be at the Cashman Gun Show. I'll be sitting at the NRA table. If you'd like to attend for free, I have about 6 passes left. Send me an email at the Fired Up, that's not the right one, but at bob@firedupmail.com. and I will get you a pass to the show. I think it's $12 or $15 to get in. I've only got a few left. I think actually 6 or 7. So we'll be back next week on YouTube with a little final on the judge races just before the election. I discourage you from early voting because Hillary will do a lot more stupid things between now and what did you tell me your medical just went up from the Obamacare?
My medical just went up because of the Obamacare, went up from $505 a month to $1,092.88 a month.
A retired federal employee. Isn't that nice?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Obama.
Free medical care, free college, free phones, free whatever. You know, why would you not vote for Hillary? She's trying to buy the election. Don't go for that, people. Vote for what's right. We're done for the evening. My clock says we're about 10 seconds away. So we will hear you or see you all next week. We'll be back with Don Green. Thanks for paying attention. Be sure and vote. Your country is depending on it.
If you can't vote, you can't complain.
But they will.
They will.
Thanks, folks.